Puck in Ohio. Hello, Puck. You are on the air.
Hey, everybody.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hi.
What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, this is my first time calling any ACA show, but I've been watching for a long time.
Yeah, great. Glad to hear it.
Usually I work Thursday nights, so I can't watch Secular Sexuality, but I had Thursday night off today, so I said, hey, okay, I can contribute to this one.
Yay.
Dynamite.
Thank you.
I had a question about poly relationships.
Uh-huh.
And I've been poly with my wife ever since we've been married. Like our first time with another person was our wedding reception, right? So we've been doing this for a long time. But it seems to be very difficult to find a poly community that doesn't also involve a lot of other kink.
Yeah.
And like
true.
we're very vanilla. We just happen to like more than just one other person in the room.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's weird to try to find that intersection of people who are poly or at least don't mind that their partner is married to someone else, but not also into a lot of other kink. Like I've met people who are into BDSM and CGL relationships, and that's not really my thing. It's interesting to try, but I just couldn't really get into it. And just trying to find people who are interested in being in a relationship with someone who is poly, but not also engaging in a lot of the other stuff. Like, what experience do you guys have with poly but no kink?
Yeah, it's a very reasonable question. All I can say is, we've had a guest on this show who actually runs a kink and poly Facebook group, specifically because the larger poly group kind of rejected all of the kink stuff that was just sort of assumed to be part of that. So I hear what you're saying in the sense that poly people do very often just sort of take it for granted that you're going to be, probably specifically into BDSM, let alone some of these other kinks. So it's a very real problem that you're describing. I definitely relate to it. In terms of solutions, I go back to just kind of the old standby of just keep fishing, just keep fishing. But what do y'all think? What can you recommend?
I would say the same thing. Just keep trying. It's just like with any relationship. You can meet somebody that's into BDSM. You can meet somebody that's vanilla. But just like when you meet anybody, you just never know what you're going to get. So
yeah, at the very least, I can say that there are certain dog whistles, I guess, in like a more monogamous culture where you can sort of signal to people that you're interested in BDSM, whether that's, specifically going to a munch or whether that's, just including something in like your dating profile picture that, is kind of off kilter. I mean, anytime you see like any piece of leather on a Tinder profile, you can almost sort of assume, it's not a guarantee, but like you kind of know what you're looking at. Whereas, there is not a way to signal to other vanilla folks that that's kind of what you're interested in. I mean, there's truth to that, right?
I actually wonder if you could start your own poly vanilla group.
Yeah, that's something I've seen people do and have a lot of success with, actually.
Yeah, we've been able to find people. And my wife has had a regular partner for a number of years now, and she was with this person for a couple of years before finding out, hey, he's kind of into some stuff that she's not completely into. And we went to there's a number of swingers clubs here in this area, and one of them, poly and kink were so lined up together that a couple of the rooms were specifically made for BDSM, which, that's great, but it was hard to find someone who's not into that, even if you get to know a partner for a while. And I get it, because being poly, you already have to be a little bit left of center, right?
Yeah,
so,
willing to kind of buck the trends. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of makes sense that people who are poly might be a little more on the experimental side and want to try some other new things. But, it's like we're not really hurting for finding partners. It's just really weird that it seems to be difficult to find someone who's poly but straight up vanilla.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I see it over and over. And, by even mentioning swinger clubs, you bring up like another very frustrating aspect of poly dating, which is just that it's very, when you take all of consensual non-monogamy, or really all of non-monogamy, because honestly, the gatekeeping and the barriers are not always great. That covers so many different things. And when you start approaching somebody looking for a genuinely polyamorous relationship, you often get confronted with, well, I am only here to swing. Like, I'm not interested in a emotional connection, or I'm really just looking for a play partner. I'm looking for somebody to act out a fetish or kink scene with, and I'm not necessarily looking for anything beyond that. So when you're already working with a small part of the population, and then you're having that again and again, and then you're trying to get those people to actually meet one another without necessarily having to fly a poly flag over their house, it can be really, really tricky to find people, especially since people aren't flying those flags because there is so much shame. There's, legitimate risk for a lot of people to their safety or to their livelihood or, just their social standing in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it's a very real concern. I can't say that I have a whole lot of good options.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool because there's this massive overlap between the two communities, right? And a lot of that is because, it's sort of a self-select thing where the two communities have a lot of the same practical needs and a lot of the same barriers. And so it just happens that a lot of the same people happen to be interested in both. And so, when you go in, sometimes it can look like you're going into a poly group and you're finding a kink group, or you're going to a kink group and finding a poly group. Just because, these are generally local groups. And so, these people get together, in person a fair amount. And so they're meeting up, they're doing the different things, and it just sort of cross-pollinates, and you see the same sort of thing.
Part of it. I might interject, though.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because if you go to a munch, say, and it's specifically BDSM centered, the likelihood of you finding a monogamous couple there is fairly low. And that's not to say that monogamous couples aren't practicing BDSM, but they're not going to munches.
Right.
They're not hanging out at parties.
Right.
They're not going to play parties because that's sort of not necessarily antithetical to monogamy, but in a lot of ways it is. So there is a lack of organizing, I think, among vanilla poly people, because the corollary of that is true also at poly groups. You've got poly people who go to poly people parties, and poly people parties often are going to be run by or connected to folks that are going to play parties. So these poly people play parties tend to pop up from time to time. Our audio engineer is going to yell at me for that later.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, yeah, and you get a lot of the same overlap with the LGBT plus community, for the same reasons. You tend to have to search for different partners if you're LGBT because you have a small subs community and et cetera. And that can just cause, problems because there's so much overlap. And it's just, I know it can be frustrating. I get that.
There's meetup.com is a friend.
Yeah, I will say there's specifically here in Austin at least one meetup poly group that is very, I don't want to use the word wholesome, but it's very much meant to be directed away from sexuality and
Clean cut.
Yeah, right?
Straight edge.
And it feels to me from the outside, as somebody who's never been an active participant in that particular group, as not kink opposed, but very much not like a gathering point for kink-interested people. So, I don't know what that might look like where you are. I can't imagine the Ohio poly scene is super approachable.
Well, it tends to be a pretty conservative where I live.
Yeah.
Like we don't even have strip clubs allowed in within the municipal area. Got to go all the way to Dayton for that. But Yeah, I appreciate you guys helping me out. Thank you very much. I did want to say, though, with role-playing, because I heard you guys talking about, like, D&D and
Yeah.
others. My first experience with any role-play was online games, like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14, which are other great communities if you want to get into role-play. It's not as structured, but if you find the right group, they do things like that, like regular meetups or weekly meetups where they role-play within that within the realm of that world.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't know if you guys have ever tried those.
A little bit. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, my gaming died out with like the first StarCraft.
Oh,
sadly.
wow.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute.
Wow, okay.
But no, I do appreciate you giving us a call. And yeah, I would say if anybody is watching, if anybody's listening and has any great ideas, either throw them in the chat now or shoot us an email, and maybe we can get something back to Puck in the future, because this is a very real concern. I absolutely relate to what you're talking about. So I wish I had better answers for you, but I do appreciate you giving us a call.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Like, I knew what you meant when you were talking about dog whistle, but in the context of the conversation, all I could think was like, big Dom blowing a whistle.
Oh, right, for some sort of like pet play scene. Yeah.
So, yes, they do have some dog whistles that you could recognize.
Yeah. That is the danger of this show, because we are on the internet, we are talking about sex, and so we are kind of our own Rule 34.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we are bringing in the porn versions, the sexualized versions of our own metaphors and everything else. So
That's because it's time to get sexy.
yeah.
Bringing it out of the bedroom.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.